You're thinking about moving to Bradenton, Florida. Before you pack up and head south, there are a few things that locals around here might not share with you. And skipping out on those could cost you thousands of dollars or simply regret your move altogether.
Let's make sure your Florida dream doesn't turn into a nightmare.
Let's talk about what most people don't budget for when they are planning to move to Florida, and that is homeowners insurance.
Yep. So if we start on homeowner insurance, and you hear in the news that Florida, it's uninsurable or homeowner insurance is really expensive. A lot of that is scare tactics nationally and just going for clicks. The reality of it is, as of the filming of this in November of 2025, homeowner insurance in general in Florida has gone down 1%. A part that is often missed when folks are talking about insurance is the total cost of insuring a home essentially is comprised of two parts in Florida. You're going to have your homeowner's insurance, which in some cases can be expensive relative to other states. And then you're going to have your flood insurance. Your flood insurance is going to drive the cost in a way in some areas that it can get kind of expensive. And essentially when insurances are looking at flood zones, which Florida as a whole is essentially all a flood zone, but there's for the most part, three categories of the flood zones. There's your A's or your AE, which is your high risk flood zone. It's known as a 1% chance annually to flood or a 100-year flood plain. There is your X500, which is your moderate flood zone. That's 0.2% chance annually of flooding and known as a 500-year floodplain. And then there's your least risk, which is X, which is obviously the least risk of flooding in Florida and essentially the rest of the state. So homeowners insurance will look at that accordingly and charge accordingly for flood insurance when it comes to the risk of them carrying the policy of your home. Maybe you can talk about some ways that insurances will give you credits, or your insurance costs, your homeowner's insurance costs will go down when looking and purchasing a house.
Yeah, so, and this is a really good conversation to have with your realtor as well, up front, because these discounts do matter. So the discounts that the insurance is going to give you is, number one, the age of the home. Number two, do you have impact or hurricane windows? 3, what is the age of the roof?
That's a big one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also plumbing, like the newer hot water tank, newer pipes. Essentially, it's just going to be a conversation and also a negotiation when you are buying a home.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you're going to have your inspections, and some of these issues might come up. And that would be the time to negotiate. Maybe you do need to put a new roof on because it's 15 years or older. That's kind of the age where the insurance company is, kind of like, yeah, no.
That turns into the no-no zone.
Yeah. So it's definitely, you're going to get a 4-point, which we're going to talk about inspections in a few more videos. So just stay tuned for that. But you're going to have your due diligence period, and that is the time to really discuss these issues with the inspector and your agent, because those discounts can make or break a deal.
And it really does boil down to aligning yourself with a proper realtor that has local contacts with insurance brokers and insurance agents. Our insurance gal that we refer the most is right up the street on Manatee Avenue, and she's a plethora of knowledge. And a lot of times, we always joke realtors should stay in their lanes. So we know just enough to be dangerous, but when it comes down to having a full understanding of what that home insurance is going to cost, we refer it out to our gal, and she'll get you straight for sure.
Yeah. And one more thing that's very important is, even if your home is not on the water or near the water, your lender still may require you to have flood insurance. So that is definitely something to speak with your lender about. And they will let you know up front if that home is going to require you flood insurance, because like Andy said, Flood insurance can be expensive, so it is definitely something to know about up front.
So the second item that we'd like to cover that a lot of folks may not take into consideration when moving to Florida that could cost you thousands is HOAs and CDDs. These are items that are in other states or other areas, but they're pretty darn prevalent in Florida. So it's important to talk to your realtors on if you're willing to pay those fees, or if you want to be in a community without either one of those. Maybe you can expand on HOAs a little bit.
Sure. So many communities have HOAs, whether they are paid or voluntary. There are some neighborhoods that do have voluntary HOAs. We actually live in a community that has a voluntary HOA, and we don't volunteer to be in the HOA. So there's many communities just like that here in Florida, which is a little weird, but it's true. Basically, the HOA, somebody has to pay for, your guarded gate, your amenities, the maintenance of the community itself. And actually, some HOAs pay for the maintenance of your home, like your landscaping. And we have so many clients that maybe they're just seasonal, or they just want to come down here and live this Florida lifestyle, and they don't want to do anything with their yard. They don't want to own a blower. They don't want to own a lawnmower. So there are communities out there that in the HOA, it's included that for your lawn care service. So it's really important for you to communicate with your realtor, because if that's the kind of lifestyle you want to live, they need to know that.
Absolutely. And then to cover CDDs, a CDD basically is a community development district. Essentially what it is, without getting too far into the weeds on it, is a developer pulls out a bond. That bond has two fees, so to speak, built into it. The first fee is for the initial development and infrastructure of that community, things like roads, the sewer systems, the underground utilities. Though that part of the fee tends to have a term attached to it, so that term may be 20, 30 years. When the community pays that portion back, it falls off. The second part of the fee for the CDD would be for your operations and maintenance. Those tend to hang on as long as that CDD or that entity is active, which, there's cases, not all the time, but here and there, where they'll dissolve the CDD. But for the most part, you can plan on, once that term portion falls off, that maintenance portion, which is going to be quite a bit less, will continue on with the life of the community. But it's important to have an understanding of what that cost is, because it's not like the HOA where it's paid monthly or quarterly and you see it coming out of your bank account. It's actually built into your taxes.
Yeah.
So it's a separate line that when you're, whether you're paying all cash or you're financed and you have it built into your mortgage, that's going to increase the cost, or essentially the overhead and what you pay out per month. And you have to understand that when trying to figure out what you want to spend on a beautiful home in Florida.
Yep. So make sure you communicate with your realtors about that, because it could cost you thousands of extra dollars monthly and yearly.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we talked about insurance, we talked about CDD and HOA fees. Now let's talk about the intentions on you purchasing this home here in sunny Florida. Are you going to live in this home full time? Are you planning on living in this home temporarily and then renting it out, purchasing another home? Or are you purchasing this home just to make it an Airbnb for income?
Yeah, absolutely. So having those conversations initially with your realtors is very important, because when we hear gripes, so to speak, about somebody was working with X person or X realtor and they had a poor experience, a lot of times that poor experience, the reason being is those intentions weren't in the initial conversations. And what I mean by that, let's say your intention is to purchase the home and then eventually turn it into a long-term rental. Well, there's some areas and some, whether it's a deed restriction or an HOA, that in the rules and the bylaws say that you have to live in that home for, let's say, 2 years as a primary residence before you turn it into a rental. Now, they obviously do that because they don't want a bunch of rentals in the community. So there's intention behind it, but it's important to know that before you go all the way through the contract and end up owning the house and then find out that you can't rent it within the time frame that you want to. Another good example of that is our offices are actually on Anna Maria Island. Anna Maria Island is a very short-term rental heavy vacation destination. And so it gets pretty dynamic on the island in the sense that there's 3 municipalities. So there's Anna Maria, Holmes Beach, and Bradenton Beach. Each one of those cities has its own rules and regulations on what somebody can do as far as length of stay with said short-term rental.
Yeah.
And on top of that, let's say it's a condo in one of those municipalities, the condo may have rules and regulations that says either you can't have short-term rentals. They don't usually outright say it, but they'll make the minimum lease like 3 months or a year, which basically at that point means short-term rentals are out of the question, right? So there's multiple layers that can change whether you should or should not buy a property in said area relative to the initial conversations that you have with intentions of purchasing your home.
Yeah. So make sure that you do discuss that right away. Let your realtor know, let us know, hey, this is a home that I'm purchasing. Maybe I'm eventually gonna live there full time, but this is my full intention and my plan. It's very important.
Absolutely.
All right, so we talked about insurance, we talked about CDD and HOA fees, we talked about your intentions to buy here in sunny Florida. Let's talk about the future growth in infrastructure. Anna Maria Island, Bradenton, and Lakewood Ranch property values have grown, but with growth comes trade-offs. As population expands, roads widen, communities and new schools are built, and that once quiet, tucked back neighborhood may look completely different in 5 years.
Absolutely. So there's pros and cons to everything, and there's pros and cons to expansion and development. I'd say a pro to expansion and developing an infrastructure as we move farther east and we get these newer communities, newer strip malls and newer malls that house restaurants, entertainment venues, sports bars. It's all new and vibrant. There's newer schools, as my wife mentioned. So if that's important to you, and whether it's an entertainment value or you have a young family that wants to be, your kids at newer schools, then that's a part of the conversation. The con to expansion and population would be, traffic, and everybody, it can get a little bit tighter in areas that the infrastructure wasn't built for the population that now resides here. But to expand on that con a little bit, in West Bradenton, there's a big to-do, so to speak, about the expansion of 59th Street and 75th. They're moving both those roads from Manatee Ave to about 20th Street. They're widening to a 4-lane road. 59th has been all but halted. I think the community pushed back on it enough that it's halted for now. 75th is in full swing. It's actually a couple blocks down from where we live. It's important, and I'll drill down on this a little bit more. When they expanded 75th, there is the properties that ran along 75th. Those properties have an easement. Those easements have been taken by the city in the county to develop this road. And so some of these homes, which they have lost anywhere from, let's say, 1 foot all the way up to 15 feet. So they've moved their fence back and they've lost a good portion of their backyard. Imagine purchasing that home and not having an understanding that A, that easement was there, and B, that in the future they might be expanding that road behind you, and your yard is now cut in half. So that is all very important to understand those things.
Yeah, all really good conversations to have with your realtor. So make sure that you are really diving deep in the conversations with your realtor so that they can help you out the best way possible.
Absolutely.
Andy and I help lots of people relocate here to sunny Florida, so we would love to help you. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe so you don't miss another video with us.
Absolutely. And as always, our contact information is readily available. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a buzz.
Thanks, guys.